does the person you are with encourage you to read? You have to ask, what does he bring for me? Roses or books? If someone has a stake in making you better, that person will push you towards books. Books are what we all need.
Chandogya Upanishad 3.18.1. The mind is Brahm, thus one should meditate. This is the meditation with regard to the body-mind. Next, the meditation with regard to the gods. The Akash is Brahm, thus one should meditate. Both the meditations with regard to the body and with regard to the gods are being enjoined. Beautiful and complete. Both are being enjoined, both are being urged. Know the inner space called the mind and know the outer space called the world. The verse is urging you, enjoining you to know both. As is the tradition of the Upanishads, to keep knowledge complete in both dimensions, Sambhuti and Asambhuti, Vidya and Avidya. The mind is to be known, Akash is to be known, the inner space is to be known, the outer space is to be known. It is impossible to know one space without knowing the other because both the spaces are one. Because illusion and ignorance regarding one space feasts on the ignorance regarding the other space. You do not know what the world is. You are repeatedly fooled by the world because you do not know what the mind is. The outer space fools you because you do not know the inner space. Therefore, both have to be known and known together. You cannot know one and not know the other. And then there are the so-called spiritual practitioners who want to go within without really bothering to know how they are affected by the outside. What the world really is and how the world controls them. They too will not come to know. The word Ved means knowledge. And knowledge cannot be fragmented. Knowledge is knowledge. Everything that is worthy of being known comes in the purview of Vedic literature. Both Vidya and Avidya. Knowledge of the outer space as well as knowledge of the inner space. Vedic knowledge consists of both. Spirituality is not a domain divorced from the world, because you, the ego, are not someone divorced from the world. Just as the ego and the world it projects are two ends of the same duality. Similarly, spiritual knowledge and worldly knowledge are two faces of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. Are you getting it?
Now, the mind is Brahma, says the Chandogya Upanishad. The mind is Brahma. But the mind is Brahma only when you meditate. Only when the mind is meditative, the mind is Brahma. The mind is not meditative, the mind is not Brahma. It's so beautiful and so empowering. It gives you so much of a choice. First of all, Vedanta absolutely rejects any absolute power outside of you. There is no higher power somewhere, anywhere in the skies or in any other universe or wherever, producing you or controlling you or writing your destiny. You are complete, the absolute, you are the one, you are in fact the only one. How can somebody else control you? The mind is everything. The mind is your biggest weakness, and the mind itself is your highest power. There is nothing but the mind. There is nothing that runs the mind. There is nothing but the mind. And the mind runs itself. You are the choice. You are the choice between the highest and the lowest. You are the choice between the true and the false. You are neither true nor false. You are what you choose to be. You are the name of the choice. Who am I? My choice. Who am I? My choice. Am I Brahma? Not necessarily. Am I Mithya? Not necessarily. But necessarily, I am my choice to choose between the two. And I can be situated anywhere between the two. I could be close to either side. The mind is Brahma, thus one should meditate. In that meditation, the mind is close to the truth. Only in that meditation. What is meant by the mind being close to the truth? The mind being as small as possible. The mind not being confined by its usual boundaries. When you attend, when you want to know, when you seek understanding, when for you knowing is more important than self-preservation, that's when the mind is Brahma. The mind has all the powers to know, provided it drops its stubborn insistence to preserve itself. Just drop that stubbornness. Just say, I may or may not survive, but I want to know. Knowing is more important than survival. Meditativeness is more important than self-preservation. Bodh is more important than life itself. Consciousness is more important than any allurement that Prakriti can offer you, including the allurement of physical life. Are you getting it? The mind is Brahma. Therefore, the Avadhut Gita, a canonical scripture of pure Advait, begs to ask, rather, with a great laughter asks, whom to salute? Whom to salute? To whom do I now offer my salutations? Only I am there. Nobody higher than me, nobody lower than me. I am the best of the best, and I am worse than the worst. Who is to be despised? And who is to be idolized? To whom do I offer my obeisance even? Are you getting it? The mind, the mind, the mind. There is nothing but the mind. And when you look at the stuff projected by the mind, again you should know it as Brahma. But it will be known as Brahma only when you are again meditative. Else the world will present itself to you as a glorious, tempting and befuddling bundle of diversities. No oneness called Brahma, no sameness, no commonality. You won't be able to appreciate the singular element behind everything. All the differences will throw themselves upon you and induce fragments in your inner space. Just as there are diversities outside, those diversities will become the cracks within. And you will suffer. Nobody can enjoy living with cracks within. Are you getting it? Be meditative, be attentive, be honest. Always have that urge to know when you look at your life. And when you look at this business of this world all around you, again have that inquiry. It need not be a loud inquiry. In fact, it cannot be a loud inquiry. It has to be a subtle inquiry. Are radars supposed to be loud? Yes. Neither are radars supposed to be loud, nor are loudspeakers supposed to be subtle. If you really want to catch stuff, better be as subtle as possible. Your inquiry has to be continuous and silent. I love to say, like the heartbeat. Continuous and silent, like the breath. Getting it? The mind is Brahma, thus one should meditate. This is the meditation with regard to the body-mind. Next, the meditation with regard to the gods. Why gods here? Gods here refer to everything that appears powerful in the external world. Next, the meditation with respect to the gods. The Akash is Brahma. The entire Chidakash, all the three kinds of Akash, they are Brahma. Because they are all arising from the one point, which you can call as the source of the mind. Do not fall prey to the diversities. Remember the entire process of experiencing. Have an internal alarm when something starts appearing too overwhelming. Just start seeing the subject and the object together. Hop away from the one end of the duality you are stubbornly occupying. Come to a place where you can look at both the ends, where you can look at the world and you can look at the experiencer of the world, and you say, oh, this is a process in motion. This is the way the world comes to me, affects me, and this is the way I get affected. Now I see the total thing. I see that side of the story, I see this side of the story. And I can see that the entire story is just a story. Just a story. Stories are all false, no? They are meant to be enjoyed. All falseness is meant to be enjoyed. That's the way of the Mukta Purush. He enjoys Prakriti. He does not meddle, does not interfere, does not get attached. How does he enjoy? Not by way of consumption, but by way of observation. He knows and enjoys. He does not need to consume to enjoy. He just knows, and that knowing is enjoyment. Both the meditations with regard to the body and with regard to the gods are being enjoined. Do not miss out on either of them. Both are important. One cannot be sans the other. Beautiful. Not without reason is the Chandogya one of the principal Upanishads. Though it's an early Upanishad and there is a lot here that will not make much sense to the modern mind that prefers concentrated doses. But in the middle of all those voluminous verses, you come across gems like these, and then you realize why this Upanishad is so widely regarded. Yes, questions?
Acharya, as you said, no inner space and outer space. So, inner space, as we know, it's understanding versus going inside. But what we mean by knowing outer space, like, is it like understanding the world in scientific way or something else?
To begin with, it's about limiting the number of diversities that you experience. The diversities should start losing meaning. The distinctions that we see, please appreciate, are of two kinds. The common mind seeks no distinction between the true and the false. Instead, it keeps insisting on distinctions between the false and the false. So the distinction between false one and false two is of great importance to the common mind. Right? For example, I have a choice, let's say, between having sweets and let's say some fast food. And I'm diabetic. What will the common mind do? The common mind will very carefully weigh whether sweets are preferable to fast food. Whereas the fact is, there is no distinction between sweets and fast food when it comes to a diabetic body. Both are killers. But the common mind will keep on examining the difference between these two and say, what should I take? Sweets or fast food? Sweets or fast food? Irrespective of what you take, the result will be the same. So these two should be seen as one. But the common mind does not see these two as one. It sees diversities where there are none. And where there is actually a distinction, the common mind fails to appreciate it. For example, the distinction between the true and the false. Here, the real distinction should be between being wise and being tempted. But that distinction is not visible to the common mind. On one hand is wisdom, on the other hand is 100 kinds of sweets and 200 kinds of fast foods. And that is the distinction that needs to be made. All the sugar-rich foods on one side and a wise meal on the other side. But this distinction is lost on the common mind. The common mind, in fact, gets lost in the differences, the diversities available between the sweets, the fast foods and all the other things, all the sugar-rich foods. So there it proceeds with great caution. Should I take a pizza? Should I go for pastries? Should I order a masala dosa? Now, are they really different when it comes to a diabetic? I'm talking of the mind. The mind is diabetic. Are they really different, all these things? And there is so much on the menu. That menu is called the universe. There is so much on the menu. And the mind keeps choosing very carefully. Should I take this? Should I take this? Should I take this? Should I take this? Irrespective of what you take, you are hurtling towards your destruction. But you are very particular there. No, I didn't order normal masala dosa. I ordered Mysore masala dosa. I'm so particular there. Where you should have been particular, there you have no sense. Don't you see the common man? He's so particular about so many things. Just that he is not particular where he should have been particular. When you gain in wisdom, then you stop caring for a lot of things. Equally, you become very careful about something else. You stop caring for a lot of things, and that does not mean that you become totally careless. You become carefree of these things so that you can take care of something else. Have I answered?
Pranam Acharya ji, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So the Sanskrit version of this slok says Mano Brahm and it says Akasho Brahm. So Mano Brahm means mind, Man is equal to Brahm, and Akasho Brahm means Akash is equal to Brahm. So after reading the verses, I drew few conclusions. Please tell me if they are right. If they are right or not. The first thing which I thought is Man is form, mind is form, and Akash means formless. So
no, here Akash is not that absolute Akash, not the Mahat Akash. Here Akash is the space in which all forms appear. Here you can take Akash as a field. not Akash that is used as a euphemism for the absolute.
So another thing, such as mind, is man thought here? Man is generating thought here, and is Akash thoughtless?
Man is the space in which all the forms appear and you identify with them. Man is the space in which all the forms appear and Aham identifies with them. I have seen. A building is there outside, but you will not say, I have seen it. Things change the moment you take perception of that building. Now that building is in Man. And now you have a relationship. That's the difference between the outer space and the inner space. When something proceeds to the inner space, you develop a relationship. Otherwise, the outer space and the inner space are just one.
So is this same as what Kabir Sahab says, that ghat ke andar ka akash and ghat ke bahar ka akash?
Beautiful. Very good.
Both are
Very good. Very good.
Okay. So one thing I see that man is Brahm and Akash is Brahm. So is this also the same thing which Mandukya Upanishad says, I am Atma Brahm, because Atma and Brahm are same, the Akash inside and the Akash outside?
Just the same analogy. Man is being talked of as Brahm here, and Man is also referred to as Atma in several other Vedantic texts. The conclusion is obvious. Atma is Brahm.
All right. So now it makes even more sense that the Mahavakya is coming from Chandogya Upanishad. I mean, that I think makes Chandogya Upanishad the principal Upanishad.
Yes. It's just that you see, when you compare this one to, let's say, Ishavasya or Kathopanishad, or the even more precise ones like Niralambha Upanishad, then the modern mind being used to precision feels a little puzzled. Therefore, these two Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya, they do not lend themselves very comfortably to the common reader. One has to therefore sift the more relevant verses. You see, when we are taking this Upanishad, we are not taking all the verses in the sequence. We are picking up those verses that will be of direct and immediate relevance to the audience and discussing them. But those verses carry deep meanings. And also remember that these two are among the oldest Upanishads. And that is another reason why they are counted among the principal ones. Because the later Upanishads that are cleaner, that are more sharply cut out, they couldn't have been possible without these mother Upanishads. So that's another reason why these are principal.
So yes, on that same lines, I was reading Brahma Sutras a few days ago. So I see there is a strong relation between Brahma Sutra and Chandogya Upanishad, and which is not very much seen in Brahma Sutra and later Upanishad.
No, is that so because you were reading Acharya Shankar's commentary in which he repeatedly refers to Chandogya?
Yes, that could be.
That's what. Acharya Shankar was particularly fond of Chandogya. So in all his commentaries, he is repeatedly referring with a leaning towards this Upanishad. So that is there. Otherwise, it's not as if the Brahma Sutras have particularly to do with Chandogya Upanishad.
So, talking about Niralambha Upanishad, in Niralambha Upanishad, you once said that Vichar e Nirvichar. Once said.
Who said?
You said that Vichar e Nirvichar. Thought is thought. You once said in Niralambha Upanishad session.
Not sure of the context.
Thank you so much.
Acharya, I have two questions with your permission, if I can ask.
Sure.
So, first thing, uh, I have seen that it's possible that my mind is meditative when I'm making certain decisions, and certain decisions are made when the mind is not in that state. So, what makes us jump from one state to the other at different points in time?
See, it's a choice. It's just that it's not very visible that it's a choice. I'll give you an example. You choose to put yourself on, let's say, a merry-go-round or a roller coaster. Roller coaster is a better example. You make that choice, and then the thing takes you to a different place in a particular speed, and sometimes you shriek out and do all those things, and it appears as if something is happening to you. But is there not a hidden choice involved here? Didn't you choose to put yourself there? Or take a more common everyday example. We all sleep, but we just don't fall on our beds. When we sleep, the state of consciousness changes, and then things happen. Let's say dreams come to us without our permission. But did we fall asleep without our permission really? Right? Nobody sleeps with, let's say, his feet on the pillow. When you are falling asleep, you take care of a few things, right? You get rid of your shoes, for example, and you put your head on the pillow, and you put on a quilt or something. So even the decision to let's say fall unconscious is still a decision. Still a decision. And then things will happen in its wake. Now that you are asleep, something may happen and you will not be conscious of it. But didn't you consciously choose to not to be conscious? Similarly, when you say that sometimes you are meditative and sometimes you are not meditative, it is out of your own will that you make this decision. The question is not that why do we fall unconscious? The question is, why don't we have enough love for consciousness? Why do we prefer being unconscious so many times? That must be the question. Unconsciousness has to be inquired into. I opted for this thing. Now, what is so tempting in this thing that I opt for it again and again? That must be the question.
Sir, let's say theoretically speaking, I am in a state of complete consciousness. I'm completely conscious or aware or meditating. And then it's constant. What is the point? There has to be discontinuity. So that means that unconsciousness can be born out of consciousness.
Yes. Because your consciousness is never completely pure. Therefore, it can make deluded decisions. Therefore, you can, in your sober state, choose to get drunk. The sober man is deciding to get drunk. So, getting drunk is the sober man's choice. Why? Because he is already drunk. He is not fully sober. So, the drunken part of him somehow rules that moment and decides in favor of getting even more deeply drunk. We never allow ourselves to be fully conquered. Even in our movement of wisdom or sanity or meditativeness, we very skillfully preserve some little part of our nemesis within us. So when you say, sometimes I am quite meditative, even when you are quite meditative, you have ensured that you have preserved some degree of drunkenness so that it can be used later on at some other opportune moment to derive pleasure. That's why one has to allow oneself to go the whole distance. If you allow even a little bit of impurity to remain, it will come back to bite you. That's the entire purpose of preserving it, no? It should come back. Otherwise, why am I preserving it? So your purpose is served.
Like a backup option.
Like a backup option. But you see, the name of that is absolute. And what does absolute mean? 100% and a little more. No? So the absolute does not like impurities. If you have sneaked in some impurities, you will be caught and sent back. Like a smuggler at the airport. Just 5 grams of gold in, let's say, 60 kilograms of your weight, and still you will be sent back. That's the way of the absolute. It brooks no compromises.
Acharya, my second question is slightly different. So when you were talking about duality and trying to look at the experiencer and the experienced all at once, I was trying to understand it as much as possible from where I am sitting right now. So I'm a social scientist. So I was thinking, so that it led me to thinking about these principles of fairness that we study, and one of the principles of fairness, there's a Rawlsian principle which says that if you want to judge whether a policy is fair, let's say there are 10 people in the room, so you put yourself in the shoes of all those 10 people and see if that policy is fair or good for them. And then that could be a criteria to judge fairness. Now, here in spirituality, I am saying that there are two ends of duality, or there are two ends. Being what I am, I only see what is like I am the observer and something is observed. Now, being what I am, how do I turn the tables? Because even for a Rawlsian to happen, it's very difficult for me to be in someone else's shoe because I am what I am. And that is the problem where all policies fail in social maximization. So how do I become the other, like how do I flip the coin, or how do I turn the table? Being what I am.
Because you're not happy with who you are. Your unhappiness is the energy.
So we need to push. That's all.
Even the push is required because we are dishonest. Otherwise, the unhappiness, the dissatisfaction is sufficient. If somebody is dissatisfied and you still have to push her to change her life, of what use is that dissatisfaction? The dissatisfaction should be sufficient. But it is not usually. So you are right, a push is required. And that's where the teacher or institutions come into picture. That's where culture comes into the picture.
So I cannot be what I am.
You can make that choice and just bide your time. So many people do that. All you have to expend is 60 or 80 years. You can continue to live with dissatisfaction and let the years roll by.
So it is about intentions.
Yeah, it is about intentions, it is about a childlike refusal. I don't like it, why should I bear it? Maturity is not about accepting or tolerating or adjusting. Maturity is about finding a mature way, a better way, a wise way to turn the tables. Maturity is not about not rebelling. Maturity is about rebelling for the right cause and using the right way. Most people think that it is kiddish or juvenile to be a rebel, and it is mature to compromise or adjust. No. Maturity does not lie in adjustment or compromise. Maturity is about having a mature rebellion, a wise rebellion, the right rebellion, irrepressible rebellion.
I think that part has answered my questions.